Beloved child. Do not move past these words too quickly. Something has been quietly unfolding behind the scenes of a connection that matters more than you may realize, and tonight, in this fictional message of divine reflection, you are being invited to look beneath what can be seen. There is a reason your heart has been unusually sensitive lately. There is a reason certain memories have returned without warning, why a particular person has crossed your mind in moments when you were not searching for them, and why you may have felt as though an unfinished conversation was somehow still breathing in the silence. Pause here for a moment, because what I am about to reveal is not really about a gift sitting inside a box. It is about what that gift represents. Your special person has been thinking about giving you something meaningful, something chosen with extraordinary care, but every time they imagine placing it into your hands, one thought rises inside them and makes them hesitate. And the reason for that hesitation is far more emotional than you might expect. You might assume they are worried that you will not like it. You might imagine that money is the problem, or timing, or distance, or circumstances that have complicated the connection between you. Those things may have crossed their mind, but they are not the deepest reason. The real obstacle is hidden somewhere much more vulnerable. Your special person is afraid of what you will understand the moment you see what they chose. Because this is not an ordinary gift. It carries a message they have struggled to put into words. It says something about how closely they have been paying attention to you. It reveals something about the memories they kept when you thought they had forgotten. And perhaps most frightening of all for them, it exposes just how deeply you have affected their heart. There was a moment, not necessarily dramatic or obvious, when they first imagined giving this to you. They were doing something ordinary. Their attention should have been somewhere else. Then something reminded them of you. Maybe it was a phrase, a color, a melody, an object in a window, or a memory that arrived with such clarity that everything around them seemed to become quieter for a second. And suddenly they thought, they would understand this. That thought stayed. It did not disappear when the moment ended. Instead, it followed them. Later, when they were alone, they returned to it. They pictured your face. They imagined the expression in your eyes. They wondered whether you would immediately recognize why this particular gift had been chosen. And that is when something unexpected happened inside them. Excitement became fear. Because, beloved child, receiving something meaningful can reveal the giver just as much as it delights the receiver. Anyone can choose something impressive. Anyone can spend money. Anyone can wrap something beautifully. But choosing something that whispers, "I remember who you are," requires attention. It requires emotional memory. It requires someone to admit, even silently, that they have been carrying pieces of you with them. Your special person realized that this gift would reveal exactly that. You would know they remembered something you once said casually. You would know they noticed a detail you assumed nobody noticed. You might even discover that a moment you considered insignificant became one of the memories they returned to again and again. And this is where the story becomes deeper. They are not merely afraid of giving you the gift. They are afraid of being seen through it. There is a part of them that has learned to protect emotion through silence. When feelings become intense, they do not always become more expressive. Sometimes they become quieter. Sometimes they pull back precisely because something matters. Sometimes they rehearse words privately and then say something completely different when the moment arrives. You may have interpreted that distance as uncertainty. You may even have wondered whether their feelings had changed. Yet beneath the surface, another possibility has been growing. They have been trying to understand what it would mean to let you see how important you have become. There is something else you need to hear. Your special person has imagined the moment more than once. They have imagined approaching you with confidence, pretending that the gift is no big deal. They have imagined saying something simple so that the emotion does not become obvious. Perhaps they would smile and tell you, "I saw this and thought of you." But inside, the sentence would mean so much more. It would mean, "I notice you when you think nobody does. I remember things you have forgotten saying. I carry your presence into rooms where you are not standing. I have tried to convince myself that this connection could remain casual, but my heart keeps giving meaning to everything associated with you." And then comes the question that stops them: what if you understand? Not what if you dislike the gift. Not what if the timing feels awkward. What if you understand exactly what they are trying not to say? What if you look at them differently afterward? What if one meaningful gesture opens a door they have spent weeks, perhaps months, trying to keep carefully controlled? That possibility is what has been holding them back. Because once someone reveals genuine tenderness, it cannot be completely taken back. Once they show you where their heart has been hiding, pretending becomes much harder. You should also know that they have questioned themselves. They have wondered whether giving you something now would be too much. They have wondered whether you might interpret it as pressure or expectation. And because they care about how you feel, they do not want their gesture to become a burden. This is important. The hesitation is not necessarily weakness. Part of it comes from wanting to respect your emotional space. They want the gift to make you feel seen, not obligated. They want you to feel warmth, not responsibility. Yet the more carefully they think about this, the more complicated the moment becomes inside their mind. There was even a point when they nearly abandoned the idea entirely. They told themselves it would be easier to forget it. They tried to convince themselves that the moment had passed. They may have turned their attention toward ordinary responsibilities and told themselves that emotions did not need symbols. But something kept returning them to the thought. Because the gift had already become connected to a memory, and the memory had become connected to you. Walking away from the idea did not erase what it meant. It only made them realize how strongly they wanted you to have it. And there is a detail here that changes the emotional weight of everything. The gift is connected to something about you that they admire but have never properly told you. Perhaps it is your strength when nobody was watching. Perhaps it is the gentleness you showed during a moment when you had every reason to become cold. Perhaps it is your ability to continue believing after disappointment. Perhaps it is the way you made them feel heard without demanding anything in return. Whatever the exact detail may be in this fictional story, the meaning remains the same. They did not choose this because they wanted to impress you. They chose it because something about you impressed their heart. You have spent more time than you realize wondering how other people see you. There may have been moments when you questioned whether your kindness was noticed, whether your loyalty mattered, whether anyone understood the effort it took for you to keep showing up with love after experiencing disappointment. And this is why the symbolism of this gift matters. It represents being noticed. It represents someone recognizing a part of you that you rarely advertise. Your special person has seen something beneath the surface, and once they saw it, they could not completely forget it. But stay with this, because the deepest layer has not been revealed yet. There is a particular memory connected to their hesitation. Something happened between you, perhaps something small enough that you might not even identify it immediately, that changed the way they understood the connection. They replayed your words afterward. They noticed something in your expression. They realized you had given them a glimpse of your vulnerable side, even if you never intended to. And instead of making them feel powerful, it made them protective. It made them want to handle your heart carefully. That memory became one of the reasons they began questioning whether they should give you this gift now or wait until they could be certain you would understand the intention behind it. Because they know you have experienced moments when words did not match actions. They sense that empty promises would mean very little to you. Grand gestures without sincerity would not impress you for long. Somewhere inside, they understand that if they step toward you, the gesture needs to be real. That is why they are overthinking something that might appear simple from the outside. They are not merely choosing what to give. They are deciding how much truth they are prepared to reveal. And there is an irony in all of this. The very thing they fear might expose their feelings could also be the thing that finally brings honesty into the space between you. Sometimes people spend so much time protecting themselves from rejection that they accidentally protect themselves from connection too. They wait for perfect certainty. They wait for unmistakable signs. They wait until vulnerability feels safe, not realizing that genuine vulnerability almost never feels completely safe. Your special person is standing emotionally at that threshold. One side offers familiar silence. The other asks them to risk being understood. Perhaps you have noticed subtle changes. Maybe their communication has felt different. Maybe there have been pauses that seemed unusually loaded, moments when they appeared ready to say something and then changed the subject. Perhaps their energy around you has occasionally seemed warmer and then suddenly guarded. Those contradictions can be confusing, but in this story they are not meaningless. They are the outward echoes of an inward debate. One part of them wants to move toward you naturally. Another part remembers every previous disappointment and says, "Be careful." There is something almost tender about the way they have considered your reaction. They have imagined you opening the gift slowly. They have imagined you looking up at them before saying anything. They have wondered whether you would smile immediately or become quiet because you understood the significance. And strangely, it is the possibility of your silence that affects them most. Because they know that sometimes the deepest emotions do not create instant words. They create stillness. They are afraid that if they see that recognition in your eyes, every defense they have built will suddenly become useless. They may even have prepared an explanation to make the gesture sound smaller than it really is. "It reminded me of you. I thought you might like it. It wasn't a big deal." Listen to those imagined words carefully, because beneath them lies the opposite truth. It is a big deal to them. If it were not, they would not be thinking about it so intensely. They would not be wondering when to give it to you, how to give it to you, or what your response might mean. Indifference does not rehearse moments in advance. Indifference does not fear being understood. Yet I want you to notice something about yourself as well. This revelation is not asking you to chase anyone, pressure anyone, or interpret every ordinary event as a sign. The deeper spiritual lesson is about remaining open without abandoning your peace. Love that is worth receiving does not require you to lose yourself while waiting for it. You can care deeply and still remain grounded. You can hope without turning hope into certainty. You can allow someone to reveal their intentions through their choices rather than trying to write the ending for them. That distinction matters because your special person is approaching a decision they must make for themselves. No amount of guessing can make it for them. No amount of longing can substitute for courage. If they choose to give you this meaningful gift, what matters most will not be the object itself. What matters will be the intention, the consistency, and what follows afterward. A symbol can open a door, but only honesty can walk through it. And this is precisely why their hesitation has reached such an intense point. They know that after the gift, there may be questions. You may ask why they chose it. You may ask how they remembered that particular detail. You may look at them with an expression that silently asks what they truly mean. They have been preparing themselves for that possibility, and every imagined answer brings them closer to a truth they have avoided saying aloud. There is a sentence inside them that they have not yet found the courage to give you. That sentence is the real gift. The object is merely carrying it. And when you understand what that sentence is, you will understand why this has become so emotionally difficult for them. You see, somewhere along the journey, your special person realized that their connection with you was no longer contained inside isolated moments. You had become part of the way they thought about the future. Not necessarily in dramatic fantasies or impossible promises, but in quieter ways that frightened them more because they felt real. They began wondering what you would think about places they visited. They imagined telling you about things that happened during their day. They noticed experiences and thought about sharing them with you. You became woven into the ordinary spaces of their imagination. That is when they realized this was no longer simply about attraction. It had become attachment. And attachment asks difficult questions. What if I lose this person? What if I reveal too much? What if I wait too long? What if they have already stopped believing in me? That final question is the one that hurts them most. They are afraid you may have begun emotionally stepping away. Perhaps nothing dramatic happened. Perhaps you simply became quieter. Perhaps you stopped offering the same reassurance you once gave freely. Perhaps you began protecting your own heart and focusing on your own path. Your special person noticed more than they admitted. And suddenly the gift began to feel urgent. Not because they wanted to purchase your affection, but because they feared that something meaningful between you might disappear without ever being acknowledged. This is where the hesitation becomes almost painful. They want to reach toward you, yet they do not want to arrive too late with something they should have expressed earlier. They wonder whether you will think, "Why now?" They wonder whether the gesture will remind you of all the moments when they could have been clearer. They know that a beautiful gift cannot rewrite confusing behavior. And somewhere inside, they know that if they give it to you, they may need to accompany it with something much harder than generosity, accountability. That is the layer they were not prepared for. The gift started as an expression of affection. It became a mirror. Every time they look at it, or imagine choosing it, preparing it, or placing it into your hands, they are reminded of what they have not said. They remember moments when fear made them distant. They remember opportunities when honesty might have changed everything. They remember the times they hoped you would somehow understand without requiring them to explain. And now they realize that you deserved clarity. That realization has changed something inside them. There is another person they may have spoken to, not necessarily about every detail, and not necessarily someone who knows the full story, but someone whose opinion made them confront themselves. Your special person may have tried to describe the situation casually, perhaps mentioning that they wanted to give someone something meaningful but were uncertain whether they should. They expected practical advice. Instead, the response forced them to think about the question they had been avoiding. What are you actually afraid of? They did not have an immediate answer. Because saying, "I'm afraid they won't like it," would have been easy. But that was not true. The deeper answer sounded more like, "I'm afraid they will realize how much they mean to me, and then I will have nowhere left to hide." That realization followed them afterward. And now the emotional energy surrounding this decision has changed. Before, they were debating whether to give you something. Now they are debating whether to tell you the truth. Those are two completely different decisions. One requires a gesture. The other requires courage. Something in them is beginning to understand that the safest choice is not always the choice that brings peace. Remaining silent may protect them from immediate vulnerability, but it also keeps them trapped inside uncertainty. Every day they delay, another question grows louder: what if I never say it? You know that feeling too, beloved child. The human heart can carry entire conversations that never reach the mouth. People can care for each other while standing on opposite sides of assumptions. One person waits for reassurance. The other waits for a sign. One believes silence means disinterest. The other believes silence prevents rejection. And between them grows a distance neither truly wanted. But distance does not always mean the story is finished. Sometimes distance reveals what matters. Your special person has been discovering this slowly. The more they tried to treat the gift as unnecessary, the more its meaning grew. The more they told themselves they could wait, the more they imagined you moving forward without ever knowing what they wanted to say. And now there is a new fear competing with the old one. They are no longer only afraid of giving it. They are becoming afraid of not giving it. That shift is important. Because courage rarely arrives as the absence of fear. Often courage appears when one fear becomes greater than another. The fear of being vulnerable begins losing its power when the fear of lifelong regret becomes stronger. Your special person is approaching that point. Yet one final obstacle remains, and this is the part they have told almost nobody. There is something about the gift itself that connects directly to a promise, a memory, or a sentence from the past. Something you once said has remained with them far longer than you know. At the time, they may not have reacted strongly. They may even have changed the subject. But later, alone, they remembered your words. And those words became attached to the meaning of this gift. This is why they cannot simply replace it with something easier. This is why an ordinary gesture would not feel right. This is why they keep returning to the same idea. Because giving you this particular gift would quietly tell you, "I was listening." And for someone who has spent so much time wondering whether they truly understood you, those 3 words carry enormous weight. But there is still more. They recently realized something about that old memory that they had misunderstood before. A detail they once interpreted one way now looks completely different. Suddenly they understand why you said what you said. They understand why your voice may have changed. They understand why you protected yourself afterward. And that realization has made the gift feel even more significant. Now it is no longer simply something they want you to have. It has become their attempt to answer something your heart once asked without words. And they have been holding back because they are terrified that the moment they place it in your hands, you will look at them and finally know exactly what they have been hiding. But tonight, something has shifted. They have begun imagining not your rejection, but your understanding. They have begun wondering whether honesty might bring relief instead of loss. They have begun rehearsing a different sentence, one they never allowed themselves to rehearse before. And if they finally say it, the meaning of everything between you could change. Because the one thing holding them back is connected to a truth about their feelings they have never openly admitted. They have almost reached the point where silence hurts more than vulnerability. Almost. But before they can give you that meaningful gift, there is one confession they believe they must make first. And the words of that confession are connected to something that happened between you much earlier than you realize, something they remembered recently, something that completely changed the reason they chose this gift in the first place. They thought they had forgotten that moment. They hadn't. And what they finally understood about it is the reason they are now standing at the edge of a decision they can no longer avoid.